Hey, good morning, everyone. We're coming to you live this morning from Mapleton, Utah. And I'm sitting here with a great man, leader of a great family here in Utah. And allow him to introduce himself.
Hi, Mark Broberg. It's an honor to be on the video.
Brobergs. Love the Brobergs. The world can use more Brobergs, I can tell you that. We're going to take a time this morning to read chapter 14 and give you something to think about today, and hopefully you'll read along, and it might encourage you to read more of the scriptures as well and draw closer to the Lord. Yeah, so Mark is going to read the first 18 and maybe give you a little bit of a synopsis of what's going to happen here in a little header before the chapter, but we'll go through the first 18 and then share a couple thoughts and then go through the second 18 and do the same. All right?
All right, so Matthew 14, the header says, John the Baptist is beheaded. Jesus feeds the 5,000 and walks on the sea. Those who touch the hem of his garment are made whole.
All right.
Okay, at the time, Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Jesus and said unto his servants, This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For John said unto him, It is not lawful for thee to have her. And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being foreinstructed of her mother, said, Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. And his disciples came and took up the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus. And when Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Sent the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart. Give ye them to eat. And they say unto him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me.
Yeah. I wish I was there for all of that, not for the beheading of John part, but it'd be a pretty sad day.
I notice on this one, it doesn't show, at least yet, talking about his own feelings of the beheading. In other times you see him responding, even though he likely knows these things are going to happen. When he raised Lazarus, and he still wept, showing that compassion for those that were weeping, those that were sorrowed. Don't see that yet here as far as his own
feelings towards
response
John
to that yet.
Yeah, but he did go off. He obviously said that he did departed, and once
he left. Yeah,
and he went into a place that was apart from them. But he couldn't go far, long. I mean, as soon as he leaves, there's people that are after him, trying to, be close to him.
I wonder if he was able to send his spirit to John, who had passed into another realm.
Yeah, have a couple of words with him.
Yeah, that'd be pretty amazing.
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing? I'm sure Jesus just checking in with him. How you doing? And knowing that he's in paradise.
Yeah.
right? There's probably
We shouldn't fear death, of course, and so maybe he knew it was a good thing that the suffering and his imprisonment was over. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting, and then that you would send how Herodias's daughter would send her daughter to dance for King Herod just to get him to do that. And obviously, when somebody said something back then, unlike today when people shake your hand, it doesn't really mean anything. They could be like, yeah, we have a deal, and then 20 minutes later you don't have any deal. But Herod, when he committed to the daughter of Herodias, I mean, that was it. He couldn't back out of that.
It was much more serious back then. Yeah. A promise, a covenant, a handshake. I think it's something interesting in today's vernacular is, the word covenant has to do with the word to cut. You look at the old meaning of it, and we sometimes in our culture use the term, let's cut a deal.
Yeah.
And so to cut a deal, I think, comes from the ancient word of covenant. And they're very serious about their promises they made back then, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and so here they are, the disciples are, all these people are hanging out, and Jesus is like, let's get them something to eat, right? And let's see where it goes from there, right?
Okay.
And so he says, he's got the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and he says, or they talk about that, and he said, bring them to him. And then in 19 it says, and he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. I wonder how many was like totally there,
Pretty amazing.
I mean, had to be a lot of women, and if there's women and men, and their children are there, but I don't even know what to guess. But obviously they just counted the men for some reason. But it says, and straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship, and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into the mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come out unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. And when they were gone over, they came into a land of Gennesaret. And when the men of that place had knowledge of him, they sent out into all the country round about, and brought unto him all that were diseased, and besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched were made perfectly whole.
Nice. Something I liked was it says they were filled, from the miracle of the food, and there's probably more meaning in that than just we had something to eat, but a spiritual experience.
Spiritually fed.
And that's something we can always work on a daily basis in our lives, like right here and now. And I thought that was nice. We should strive to be filled daily.
Yeah, I like that, spiritually fed. And I think by reading the scriptures, obviously we get spiritually fed because we're able to see the actual hand of God and Jesus, at work, right?
Yeah.
And then we can kind of apply that to our lives. I heard that a couple of things that stood out to me here that I've talked about in the past or heard in the past was the reason for, them to collect those 12 baskets, of fragments, right? And the bread and the fish, and to take with them on the boat, was like something that was there. It's like, as a reminder of what he just did. This miracle was this profound miracle, and he just created like all this food out of so little, right? He turned so little into so much. And sometimes the disciples, I guess, would forget, like just like we forget what he's done for us sometimes, I think. And there's these reminders in our lives. We may not have 12 baskets or fragments of fish and bread, in a basket in our house, but there's something that the Lord did for us that was probably more than what we needed, right? It was an abundance. He always does things that are more than what's necessary. He gives us more than we need. Even though sometimes we feel that we're lacking or whatever, we're not ever lacking. We always have enough, and he's given us everything that we need. And so it's like this reminder to them or for them of what just happened. And now, here he comes like walking on the water, and they just saw like countless miracles and healings and all these things, right? And then he even had this like physical thing to hold, and it probably smells, I mean, fish is like, smelly business, right? So it's not just like, oh, we have fish, and be like, oh, yeah, we have that fish. You remember that, right? So it's more
tangible.
Yeah. And so then he goes walking on the water, and they're still like unsure of like, what's possible, and all things are possible with him. And then I was thinking about when Peter goes down, he starts sinking. I could just imagine like all the boys on the boat, right? What that scene looks like. Peter's out in the water, and they'd be like, hey, look at Petey, and he's walking on water. And he turned around and smiled at the boys and be like, what's up? Take like a little photo pic or whatever, a little, little shot. And he takes his eyes off the Lord. And as soon as we take our eyes off the Lord, we begin to...
We could lose that.
Yeah, we begin to sink. And, so it speaks to me and tells me that, obviously us focusing on scriptures and focusing on the Lord is the best way to go. Right. And as soon as, try not to take your eyes off of him, because as soon as you do, then you can be swayed or sink or whatever. I mean, the adversary can have his way with you.
You look at, it's interesting to watch like a marriage that breaks apart. People will sometimes say, I never loved him. And they actually believe that when they say that. But if they really were to go back into history of that relationship, they really did love their partner, but they actually forgot. So to your point about constant reminders, we need those, or we can forget, and we don't want to forget. And so I love the fact that we have the opportunity daily to get that spiritual, the bread and the fish, to get filled, and a weekly opportunity to in a sacrament setting as well, to give us those reminders, because one of the worst tragedies is forgetting the power and the blessings of the Savior and what he can do in our lives, and how we can take that and help bless others as well. It's pretty amazing. And never forget what he has done, already. I mean, because it's like sometimes people do stuff for us and we forget. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. I think it happens to all of us. Well, it happens to me sometimes, and I have to be reminded. So keeping journals, talking about these things, keeping them fresh in your mind. That's what the message is today. Think of the Lord, read the scriptures. Don't forget.
Yeah, don't forget. Don't forget what he's done for you. Don't forget, that he's still in our lives. He's with us. He's always reaching for us. Even when we sink and we take our eyes off of him, there's always a way back. There's always a way to reach for him. He's always got his arm extended. And I'm so grateful to be here with the Brobergs this past almost week here. It's been a wonderful experience, and I'm so grateful for Mark for joining me today. If you have any comments, leave them in the section below, or questions and some thoughts maybe that you have about the scriptures. I'd love to read them and learn about them and put them into my little vase that I'm making of all these beautiful things.
Thanks for letting me be part of this today. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Oh, let's see if we can